rocket launcher on a remote Philippine island does not look like the center of a naval crisis. It is not as dramatic as an aircraft carrier, not as visible as a destroyer, and not as fast as a fighter jet. But in the West Philippine Sea, the most dangerous thing is not always the biggest platform. Sometimes it is the weapon that can appear where the enemy did not expect it, fire from land, and disappear back into the island chain before the targeting cycle catches up. That is why HIMARS near the West Philippine Sea changes China's calculation. The real story is not just that a rocket launcher fired during a drill. The real story is how that launcher got there, what kind of geography it uses, and why a truck-mounted system on an island can suddenly become a maritime problem. HIMARS stands for High Mobility Artillery Rocket System. It is a rocket launcher mounted on a tactical truck, built around a simple idea: move fast, fire accurately, and survive by moving again. A standard HIMARS launcher carries one rocket pod, which can hold 6 guided rockets, and because the system is light enough to be transported by aircraft like the C-130, it can reach places where larger missile systems would be too slow, too heavy, or too easy to track. But the most important word in HIMARS is not rocket. The most important word is mobility, because in the Philippines, mobility is not just a feature, it is the strategy. The Philippines is not one battlefield. It is an archipelago of thousands of islands, narrow roads, hidden coastlines, small airfields, jungle routes, and maritime corridors where ships, Coast Guard vessels, supply missions, and military aircraft can all operate inside the same pressure zone. In that kind of map, a weapon does not need to dominate the entire ocean to matter. It only needs to make the enemy unsure about where danger might come from. And that is where the landing craft part becomes important. During HIMARS mobility training in Palawan, the launcher did not simply drive out of a permanent base and fire from a prepared range. The movement itself was the message. The system was loaded onto a C-130J aircraft in Subic, flown to a waiting U.S. Army landing craft utility vessel, driven onto the LCU, transported by sea across Palawan, offloaded in Bataraza, and then driven inland toward a firing site near Rizal. To most people, that sounds like logistics. To military planners, that is the main event. Because if HIMARS can move by aircraft, then by landing craft, then by road, then fire near the shoreline, the launcher is no longer tied to one predictable location. It becomes a moving question. Where is it now? Which island is it on? Did it arrive by air? Did it move by sea? Is it still in Palawan, or has another launcher already been shifted somewhere else? That uncertainty is the weapon before the rocket is even fired. Before we go deeper, write proud in the comment section. Because here at Force 9, we do not just watch military exercises as a spectacle. We read the strategy, the power, and the hidden message behind every major maneuver. Don't forget to subscribe and like so analysis like this can keep coming. Sharp, serious, and easy to understand. Now look at Palawan. Palawan is not just another Philippine island. It is a long piece of geography facing the West Philippine Sea, positioned near some of the most contested waters in Asia. From this island, the Philippines looks directly toward maritime zones where tension with China is not theoretical. It is already visible through patrols, supply missions, Coast Guard encounters, and disputed features. So when HIMARS operates from Palawan, the rocket launcher is doing something bigger than supporting troops on land. It is showing how land power can shape what happens at sea. A ship operating near contested waters no longer thinks only about other ships. It also has to think about the coastline, the roads behind the coastline, the airfield that could bring a launcher in, the landing craft that could move it by sea, and the hidden firing position that may only become visible after the missile has already launched. That is how a land-based system becomes a maritime problem. This is the logic of sea denial. Sea denial does not mean controlling the whole ocean. It means making certain waters dangerous enough that the opponent cannot move freely, cannot plan confidently, and cannot assume that its ships are operating without risk. For the Philippines, this matters because Manila does not need to match China ship for ship. It cannot build a navy the size of China's overnight, and it doesn't have to. What it can do is make aggression more complicated. It can make movement slower. It can make landing operations harder. It can force more surveillance, more caution, more planning, and more doubt. HIMARS fits that equation. because it turns geography into pressure. A road becomes a launch route. A small airfield becomes an entry point. A landing craft becomes a bridge between islands. A coastline becomes a threat line. And an island that looked quiet yesterday can become a firing point tomorrow. That is why China has to calculate more than the rocket's range. It has to calculate the pattern. US forces are practicing missile mobility in the Philippines. Philippine forces are learning how to connect islands into a defensive network. Landing craft movements prove that the launcher can be shifted across water. Aircraft movements prove it can arrive quickly. Road movements prove it can disappear into terrain. And live fire training proves that this is not just a theory drawn on. This is what makes the West Philippine Sea more complicated. A Navy wants clarity. It wants to know where the threats are, which routes are safe, where the enemy is positioned, and how long it has before being targeted. HIMARS breaks that clarity because it is not fixed. It can move by air, move by sea, move by road, fire from land, and relocate before the enemy has a clean answer. That is the new equation around the Philippines. Mobility creates uncertainty. Uncertainty slows decisions, and slow decisions raise the cost of aggression. So why does HIMARS near the West Philippine Sea change China's calculation? Not because one launcher can win a war by itself. It cannot. It changes the calculation because it proves a concept. The sea can be defended from land, and the Philippine island chain can become a network of mobile firing points, hidden positions, landing routes, and allied coordination. The strongest weapon is not always the one with the longest range or the biggest explosion. Sometimes, the strongest weapon is the one that creates the most doubt before it ever fires. And in the West Philippine Sea, doubt may be exactly what China does not want.